Hello, Periscopers. How are you? This is Monica A. Coleman, and I'm checking in with Bipolar Faith. Thank you for joining us, True Anglican. Just getting started. Thank you for joining us, Crystal Ashan. I saw someone else come on real fast. I didn't catch your name. Sorry. Thank you for joining us. Again, hi. Thank you, Tatari66, for joining us. Hi. It's good to see you again. Thank you for joining us, FM George. I think that's Felicia. Seymour Kitty, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Thank you for the hearts. I feel the love. It's such a Monday, isn't it? It feels like it's a Monday. It's a Monday afternoon. It is Felicia. Hey, I thought that was you. Good to see you. Hello from Canada, Newfoundland, right? Not the Vancouver part, not the Ontario part, Newfoundland. So I appreciate you joining us. Yeah, see, I remember. This is nice. I'm sitting in a rocking chair right now just for a minute. This is my chance to sit down. Today I've been sitting, but I've been in meetings, which, all day. Yes, this is Bipolar Faith. So, yeah, you're new to us, but Seymour Kitty. And one thing I do, thank you for joining us, Frank77. My name is Monica Coleman, and I am a professor of religion and theology, and I'm based in Los Angeles, California. And I am the author of the forthcoming book, Bipolar Faith, A Black Woman's Journey with Depression and Faith. And I said I would kind of come on here and talk a little bit about the questions I get asked the most often. And what I get asked more than anything else when I go and speak places and talk about things are, what are your spiritual practices? And what is it that I do to live and successfully, I guess, manage a depressive condition? So I'm just kind of popping on a little bit every day and talking a bit about what that is. And so thank you. I just want to talk briefly about priorities. And these are not my deep words of wisdom. These are just some of the things I deal with every day. And I've been talking a bit lately about how many responsibilities I have and how I often feel overwhelmed or tired. So I'm just trying to figure out how to balance everything. And what really came to me, I've been talking about baking. Yes, I have been. I had a whole one on cooking. Actually, you almost got to see me chopping onions today because I'm running a little late on my dinner prep. But today I put priorities in, and that's kind of a shorthand for what I've been thinking about lately, and in terms of just kind of life management, but also how one lives with, at least for me, how I live with a depressive condition and what a spiritual practice is. And so in some ways, just figuring out my priorities is a spiritual practice. And not in the sense of making lists, which I love to do. I have lots of lists and little note cards of lists and apps about lists. So I do like to do lists. But not just what are my priorities today, but thinking about what really matters. What are those basic things that are important? And as I was thinking about that, I thought, is that a spiritual practice, or is that just something everybody has to do, figure out your priorities? So yes, I do live with a depressive condition. I live with a bipolar depression. And it's just kind of part of the texture of my life. And I was thinking about priorities in the sense of, I think I come from a tradition that talks about what really matters and knowing what really matters as a kind of spiritual practice. I think about scriptures in Philippians 4 or Romans 12, where there are these prayers and these hopes that we're able to set our minds on whatsoever is true or what is right, and that it's a kind of discernment to figure out what to think about. It's a kind of spiritual discernment, a hope, a prayer that we're able to put our minds on the things our minds should be on. And sometimes, I come from a tradition, I have these evangelical roots in my tradition where I've been taught that sometimes, the body wants one thing and the mind wants the other, and you need to put your mind on the right things, on the holy things, on the pure things. And that's cool, but I don't think that's exactly what it had in mind. I think it's also like sometimes we just need spiritual divine help in figuring out What matters most, and sticking to that. And I love my Canadian evangelical. I mean, again, I have these evangelical dimensions. And and so I've been asking myself, what really matters here? What really matters in terms of my priorities? What really matters in terms of my time? How do I want to spend my time? How do I not need to be spending my time? Because there's so much to do and so many things going on. That I just say, if I look at the scheme of my deepest values, what really matters? And that's hard, right? Because I've mentioned sometimes it's hard to get back to the basics of getting up, getting dressed, eating breakfast. Phew, I'm done. What more do you want, right? There's sometimes just doing the basic parts of life can be difficult when you're in a depressive state or you're just really stressed. But for me, I've been asking myself and asking God to focus my mind on what matters most. And so True Anglican's asking me, does having a family make it more difficult? In some ways it does, because I have to show up for other people when I can barely show up for myself. And yet they're also my motivation to kind of kick it into gear if I can kick it into gear. And for me, they are my what matters most, right? When I look at all the things I have to do and endless emails, and for people who aren't getting emails returned, this is why. Because I say, what really matters? Well, the well-being of my loved ones matters. My health matters, right? And, as I began, when I feel like I'm in these quandaries and I can't get everything done, I say, what really matters? And what are these core things that are important? And I remember that this is something that people of faith always struggle with in some ways. This is not like, oh, because you're depressed or bipolar, that you can't figure it out. Because sometimes it is even harder to figure it out when your mind's not working with you. But when I can think about what are the things that truly matter, that truly need my attention, that I truly love and value and care about in the world, and I wrote them down, then I realized all the things that weren't on that list and all the things that didn't matter, that I was worrying about and trying to figure out and trying to take care of and trying to manage. And they weren't even on that top 5 or top 8 of what really matters, what matters most. And so I called it priorities, but it's really about how do we get our minds on whatsoever is good and whatsoever is true and whatsoever feels right for us, right? How do we get there and let the other stuff fall away? So, hi, thank you for joining us, Avalon's Young. I think when it talks about be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and not being anxious and not being worried, but keeping our minds on certain kinds of things, I think it's like, what are your priorities? And they're different for different people. And thank you all for joining us. I so appreciate inviting your followers. Thank you. That everything is different for different people, right? That what matters most for me might be different than what matters most for you, just like God calls each of us differently and in different ways. And so that's what I'm thinking of as a spiritual practice for today and for the last couple of days. And I've been talking to some of my closest friends about, like, here, listen to me, talk this out with me, be my community, be my disciples, my fellow disciples, as I think about, hey, I think this is the stuff that I need to focus on for the next year. And then I'll come back to it and look at it again and say, what is it that matters most? And what is the most important thing to be thinking about? And I think that there's a lot of spirit in that process. I think that God is really present in helping me to think about that, right? And that I want them to be the same things that God cares about. And so for me, that's a kind of spiritual practice right now, that's a discernment, I guess I would say. That discernment isn't just about what's that big calling for my life, what's this big capital W God's will for my life, but also what are my priorities right now? What matters more than anything else? So I appreciate those of you who are telling me to go to the Avalon Young show. And yes, I do have children. I have a family. And so that's all part of how I pull all things together. So I'm going to sign off so I can make dinner for my family. And I'll be back tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, different time zone, 7:30 on the East Coast, and wherever else you're joining us. People have been joining us from London. That's been really amazing, and I appreciate that. So if you enjoy this, feel free to share with friends. I have it on Twitter at Monica A. Coleman. You can pre-order the book Bipolar Faith on Amazon, which I appreciate, and you can just use the hashtag Bipolar Faith. And I will get online and check out Avalon Young's show to see what's going on. Till tomorrow.